The only Jewish gladiator I know of was Simon Lakish. The story of his life is an inspiration for many of us. His wisdom and weakness, his strength and his academic prowess are known to many a Torah scholar, but less so to us, for we swim in the murky sea of secularity. The story deals with the Jewish forbidding of inflicting verbal harm. Simon lived in the 3rd century AD in Tiberias of the Galilee. Tiberias was a seat to many Jewish scholars. It was part of the Roman Empire, and the internal affairs were run locally by the president of the Jewish court. Simon was a small stocky child who got into a lot of trouble. He was argumentative and defiant, and after his bar mitzvah at the age of 13, he gained some height. In fact, he gained so much size that he towered over everyone. He was powerful indeed, with a big black beard, but not so strong academically. When Simon dropped out of Torah study, people were not really surprised. He was utterly useless in reading, in memorizing, he had poor social skills, and he was somewhat less obedient than one might desire. Furthermore, he ended up as a watchman for local orchards, but fell into bad company. Despite Simon's poor social skills, he seemed to do rather well in leading the poor company that he fell into. He led them into highway robbery, even though there weren't any highways, some extortion. He was based out of Caesarea, which was a seaport, and there was much property and goods that came in, and Simon provided an important service of unorganized crime, and he took a bit of everything that passed by him. Simon's mistake was that he was inclusive. He included some of the Roman officials in his endeavors, and this brought him under the wrong eyes. He was arrested and brought to justice. He was sold off as a slave. However, his powers and fighting skills caught the attention of a local gladiator school, and he was bought by the school. Simon trained over a year to fight in the arena in Caesarea. Part of this was throwing local wrongdoers to be mauled by wild animals, and some was just good old-fashioned gladiators who fought each other to death. But Simon survived his first 6 matches. He was quite good. Actually, after that he was set free, as was custom, but he had nowhere to go. So he signed on for another term, and then another. Having survived 3 terms in the arena, it was time for him to be sent off. He had some money, he was unmarried, he was a free man, but he had nowhere to go. He went back home to Tiberias, where he knew some people. That's all he could think about. Things didn't change much, he thought. He saw some of his old schoolmates and peers rinsing themselves in the Sea of Galilee. He joined them with a splash, but as he swam towards them, they swam away. They didn't recognize him, nor felt comfortable with his strange tattooed, bulky presence. The first to realize who he was John, the top scholar and the leader of the study group. John was already a renowned rabbi. His smooth white skin stood odd next to Simon's dark hulk. "Hello, Simon," he said, with a critical voice, as though, "Buddy, you are not welcome here. You are an outcast and a thug." We are not entirely sure of the exchange that took place. The bottom line is that John told Simon that if he, Simon, gave up his ways and dedicated all his strength and power to study, he could rejoin the community. What we know is that Simon agreed to dedicate his entire strength to the Torah study and to good deeds. We know he meant that because he immediately started drowning in the lake. He had completely given up on physical strength. They all had to help him out. Simon spent the next 30 years studying Torah with John as his counter. They would argue for days over the intricacy of Jewish law and the intent of the lawmaker. He also married one of John's sisters. Simon became a very significant rabbi. His rulings are well documented and are a big part of Jewish doctrine. But the story of Simon Lakish does not end here. It deals with one of the most significant Jewish instructions, the instruction to refrain from inflicting verbal injury. So one day, during a heated argument about the defilement of a knife, John, in the intensity of his anger, muttered, "He should know." At once the room became silent. In 30 years, no one ever mentioned Simon's past. It was considered an unpardonable offense, an unspeakable sin against man and God. Simon's pain was apparent. He got up slowly and made his way back home. By the time John had come to beg his forgiveness, he had died. John too died that week, of guilt and of a broken heart. They were inseparable.